there's enough talent on this roster where if you were to go, full rebuild, you could still reload in a couple of years. It wouldn't be like a Knicks situation or a Pelican situation.
Joining me right now, my guy, my pal, Kelly Iko in the building, on vacation no less. Dude, thanks for hanging out with me today.
No problem, bro. I gotta be here. I gotta make time.
Hey, man, I'm so excited about this every week. That's why when you were like, I don't know, I was like, oh, please, man, because this is like legitimately. I was pumping you up to the people earlier. I said you're not going to get better insight or information than you will with Kelly Iko. So I'm so excited that you're doing this. I really appreciate you joining me on vacay. You're doing a staycay? Is that the thing?
Yeah, I just unwind for the second half of the season because that first half was a doozy.
Bro, are you as a writer, are you like, is it worse when the team sucks or is it better because there's so much that you can complain and write about?
It's definitely worse.
It's shitty to be in that locker room with a bunch of pissed off players, right?
Well, because of COVID, we haven't been in the locker room in over a year. So yeah, everything's on Zoom, but I can feel it through the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, are you kind of glad you don't have to be in the locker room? Let's be real.
I mean, no, because there's a lot of new faces. You always want to make new relationships and stuff like that. But it has been very tough on those guys. So I do kind of get the frustration, of a 11-23 record.
It's bad, dude. It's real bad right now. Sports in this town. I mean, hopefully the Astros don't shit the bed, but right now Texans, Rockets, it's pretty bad. 2 of the 3 major teams are not good. Specifically regarding the Rockets, I talked to you. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. There's this notion being floated about in the media nationally that the Rockets are about to enter a fire sale, that they're about to just, okay, none of this worked. It's just time to start over. Are you hearing that? Are you seeing that? What are your thoughts on that kind of statement?
Well, I haven't heard fire sale. I mean, that implies that, everything can go. And yes, for the right price, I don't think there are many untouchables on the Rockets roster. But as far as the trade deadline, and I reported this, for weeks, the only 2 names I've heard seriously, to garner interest, obviously PJ Tucker, Ben McLemore is another one. Obviously, Victor Oladipo, there are teams that would like to have him. We've heard about that. Teams would like Eric Gordon, Dan House. The Rockets have a lot of interesting pieces, that could help other contenders, but, I don't think that they're in quote unquote fire sale mode. I just think that people expect them to be in fire sale mode because of their record and because of the draft class coming up, and because that's typically what bad teams do around this time of the year. They sell the whole house off. But I do think that with what they've gone through, the Harden trade, COVID, out the lineups, injuries, and with guys just coming back, I do think that Steven Sauce at least wants to see what this group can do, because it's been so many games of uncertainty, so many games of inconsistency, just because of lack of bodies, and you can't get a real grasp of what this team can be. That I think if you give them some more games, you can see what if they are a team with potential, or if they are a group of guys that you should probably look to tank. So I do think towards the deadline, which is 2 weeks away, you will hear more talk, Ben McLemore, those kind of guys, or Oladipo. You'll hear that, every now and then. But if I was to put my money on who I think would be gone after the deadline, I would say most likely would be Tuck. I just think that, it's been a situation that's been heading that direction for quite some time. I think both sides know where they stand. The Rockets have given an offer in the past, but Tuck, they turned it down. They're not having many more talks about that. He's made it clear, what he wants to do. He's a professional at first, so he's going to give his all for the teams and silence. But in the perfect world, he'd be playing for a contender.
All right, so let's run through the roster. Let's run through the big names, and you just give me a yes or no. Will they be a Rocket after the trade deadline? I think that's a great place to start. So let's just start let's start with Oladipo. I think that's the easiest. Will Victor Oladipo be a Rocket after the trade deadline? Yes or no?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. Will John Wall be a Rocket after the trade deadline?
Yes.
Christian Wood,
Yes.
Eric Gordon.
Yes.
Wow. All right, PJ Tucker,
No.
Ben McLemore.
No.
Okay, so if we look at the biggest names on this team, you feel like the rest of those. Now, I'm curious as to know why your answers were what they were. Talk about in generality terms of yes and no. Is it because of their contracts and people's willingness or unwillingness to take them on? What is the reason that you said yes to that group and no to the other?
So the reason why I said no to Christian Wood is because I don't think the Rockets would trade him right now. That doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. John Wall, they like him. They love John Wall. They want him to stick around. He's the leader of the team. He's played really well this season. It doesn't make sense to move him. Um, Vic, Vic is a maybe. I don't want to say yes or no. It's because I get why you would move him if you know that A, you're not going to give him that kind of money that he's looking for in the offseason, and B, you always would like to get something back for a play. Because if you think about it, Vic is the quote unquote best player in the Harden deal. So if you let him walk, you're essentially saying that you traded James for picks. So I get why the notion of trading somebody before you get nothing back exists because it makes sense. But I don't know. I don't
Well,
think the
I mean, he wants to be in Miami. Everybody knows that, right? And he's a
well,
free
yeah,
agent, so he'll have that right to turn down a Rockets
like,
offer and take less money to play where he wants to play. Wouldn't it? I mean, don't be the Texans, right? If he doesn't want to be here, get something for him. I'd rather them get picks than to be like, well, we lost him. Because then at least if you traded James for what ends up being a bunch of picks versus some picks and you lost a guy, that wouldn't make as much sense.
right. Well, if those picks turn out to be Kid Cunningham or Evan Mobley, they'll be Rockets fans will be pretty happy. But
Yeah.
like you said, if you know that Vic is dead set on leaving, like you should at least get something back from him. That's just good business. But honestly, I don't think the Rockets are in a position where if he were to walk, they would scratch their hair out. I don't think it's been that kind of year. I just think that they're looking for just clarity on that in terms of both sides and in their future directions. But yeah, same with Gordon. I think they like Gordon. At 18 million a year, the value is kind of but he has played well this season. He's played well this season for them, given what he's been asked to do. Be an extra ball handler, be a switchable defender, multiple scheme defender, a scorer, creator. He's done well on that. Now guys like Ben McLemore, he's a shooter, and contenders need shooters. Philly needs shooters. Milwaukee could use another shooter. The Clippers. There are a lot of teams.
I was going to say, the Lakers and the Clippers could both use shooters.
Yeah, last season, Ben McLemore was one of the best. I think he shot eight or more threes a game at 40%. That's incredible value.
Crazy.
And this season, he's gone through some crazy shooting slump, but this whole team has just been in the dumps. So I do think that there's value in him. If you could get maybe a second round pick or something for him, you should do it. Now, the main thing is going to be Vic, Tuck, those kind of names that teams want because they can help now. You see why the Warriors want him. You see why teams like Miami want him, the Knicks, because while he has played pretty inconsistent as a Rocket, he is still a strong two-way player. He can handle the ball. He can score at all three levels. He can defend, switch. He's a good guy in the locker room. So there's a value in that. Now, I don't know what they're going to do between now and the deadline because it's Stone's first official go around with the team and could do anything. But I do think Tuck will be gone. I would be very surprised if Tuck is a Rocket past the deadline and Ben. I would be very surprised.
It's interesting because I think this team doesn't know what it wants to do, right? It feels like they know they need to rebuild after trading James, but they got Christian Wood in and they've got some names that still have something to prove in Oladipo and John Wall. So it's like, well, we love Christian Wood. I think that's the given. That's the one guy on this team, maybe with John Wall, that doesn't even consider to be moved. But if you're going to rebuild. Why are you hanging? If you want to rebuild around Christian Wood, I'm good with that. I made the statement last week or maybe earlier in the week that Christian Wood might end up being the next James Harden, not from a standpoint of the greatest scorer on the planet, but just from a cornerstone piece that you build around a franchise on. But
Yeah, and I've heard
if
the
you're
same
going to
thing.
rebuild, but don't hang on to some guys if you,
Yeah.
you don't half-ass a rebuild is my point. Would you agree with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, and I've written that before. Like, I feel like they're caught between two eras, like, and it's two kickers, schools of thought of go full rebuild or try and be a team that can still compete for a playoff spot. And I think that uncertainty is what's going to hold you back the most if you think about it. So I do think there's enough talent on this roster where if you were to go, full rebuild, you could still reload in a couple of years. It wouldn't be like a Knicks situation or a Pelican situation where you just not competing.
Floundering
But
Sacramento, where you just
yeah, I don't think it's going to be that dire. So I think they have enough pieces there to where you can move, players and still technically rebuild, but still, come back potentially just as deep in a couple of years. So yeah, it's a tricky thing. At the end of the day, it's a pride thing. You know, Organizations have a lot of pride. General managers have a lot of pride. Players have a lot of pride. And if you tell them indirectly or directly that you want to tank, it comes off as the wrong message. So it's really tricky, like those kind of dynamics within the team.
all right, last question, because I know you're on vacation. I don't want to keep you. I promised you 10 to 15 minutes, and it's 3:40. This will probably take you a couple of minutes to answer. Maybe not. I don't know. But we've got a new front office, so to speak, in Stone and in Steven Silas, and the way that this season's gone. And who lasts longer? If you had to pick one in this 2-horse race between Steven Silas and Rafael Stone, who lasts longer, Stone or Silas?
I mean, you got to say Stone, right? I mean, because Steven Silas, he's a great guy, but if it's come down to longevity between general manager and head coach, I'm always going to go general manager because we've seen too many times in the past where head coaches are made to be, the sacrificial lamb for a team's, failure. So if I was to pick those two, I would definitely say Rafael Stone.
Now, that's from a logical standpoint. Who do
Yeah,
you think is better at their job and more qualified for their job? Or do you think that that's an even horse race?
who's better at their job?
Yeah, who's more qualified? Because look, maybe I'm leading you
Well,
into something you don't want to talk about, but look, I don't think
yeah,
Stone is qualified to do this. He's a lawyer who learned from one of the best in the business ever in Daryl Morey, but that doesn't make you one of the best in the business. Steven Silas, as a coach, it's a little bit different. As you come up through the coaching ranks, you earn that head coaching position. As a GM, I don't think he's qualified, even based on what he's done so far, to have earned the position that he has right now. The Rockets could have done a lot better in the GM slot, in my opinion.
I mean, well, part of the if you go back to last offseason, part of the confusion was how quickly they came to that decision. But I will say he's been there a long time. First on, he's been part of some huge deals that they've made. And this offseason was good. Like getting Christian Wood at that value was fantastic. Getting Kevin Porter Jr. was fantastic. Bringing in Jason Tate, another good move. Like he knows his stuff. Now,
Okay.
obviously, Steven Silas has been around the league for decades, so
And is very well respected. And if you read some of the articles in the past written about the Rockets, they were like Rafael Stone and the way that all took place. And, he had, on his vision board, he put himself in Daryl Morey's seat and he wanted to be the GM of an NBA team. But it was never like, I don't know. It's you come up in a lane, you come up as a trajectory to hold a position. And it was like he forced his way into this as opposed to earning it. That's at least what other people have written and said about his ascension into his current position, which makes you feel like, but you're right. The results speak for itself. All of this is one of the worst teams in the NBA. So you may have got good individual value, but I don't know that he necessarily took chemistry into account as he built this roster.
Yeah, well, Daryl never wasn't particularly one for chemistry either. In the past however long he was here, almost a decade. So I think it's still early. I just think the first part of the season has been so weird. This is a team that could have a much different record than 11-23, if we're keeping it honest. They have to be
if healthy.
Yeah, on paper they're a playoff playing team, like for sure. It's just this has been a wacky year. So I would give him more time.
Okay.
But if you were to give it a grade right now, it would have to be an NA. Because like I said, the time. For Silas and Stone, because there have been some good parts, there have been some bad parts for both of them. So you have to keep it level across the playing field.
All right, one question from the chat, and then I'll let you go. But I want to get this answered because I know KD loves basketball, loves the Rockets, and I know he respects the hell out of your opinion and your insight. But Chris Davis in the chat wants to know, is Kevin Porter Jr. expected to get any minutes tonight for the Rockets?
I would think so. It could come out for what I wrote earlier in the season about their plan for him. They want him to be the team's second team point guard. You know, the minutes that John Wall sits, we've seen that the Rockets have struggled in terms of half court creation, just overall stability. And one of the reasons why the Rockets sent Kevin Porter Jr. down to the bubble was not only improve on himself, but to learn the roles as a traditional point guard. How to handle a team, how to run a half court offense, how to create for himself and others. And with the second unit that the Rockets have with Eric Gordon, Dan House, guys like that, Sterling Brown, you need somebody who's going to come in there and slow things down for a bit, just to give John Wall a breather, because John Wall's not going to play 38 minutes a night every night. That's unrealistic. And in the past couple of years, the Rockets had the luxury of when James sat, Chris was on the floor, or when James sat, Russ was on the floor. And this season, we kind of saw what happens when you don't have that luxury, and it's looked pretty bad. So that's one of the reasons why Kevin Porter should have a big role with his team for the second half of the season.
I dig it. That's Kelly Iko, everybody. Kelly, how can they find you on Twitter and social media?
Kelly Iko NBA, Kelly Iko NBA, Twitter, Instagram. Hit me up and subscribe to that.
And subscribe to The Athletic. I'm a big, when I first saw The Athletic, I was skeptical, but man, some of the stuff that you guys pump out is some of the most respected articles and writing in the business, and you're a part of that. And I'm so happy that you're a part of Barry on Deck. Thank you for doing this. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Kelly.
Peace.
That is it. Kelly Iko, the man, when it comes to Rockets insight and information. And I love that he sets me straight. I'm not a Rafael Stone guy. I don't like him. But Kelly's like, you're stupid. Daddy's making a YouTube video.